Well, hello, everybody. I decided that I would record the message from Sunday at Port Norris for both churches, obviously. But there was some kind of snafu due to my woeful technology ability. It just didn't work. I've been having trouble with Zoom, and I thought, well, I'll record the sermon like I did the previous week, but something went wrong. So here it is. I want to share my Veterans Day message. Veterans Day was so important to all of us. And when I was a boy, I absolutely loved history of all kinds. And even when I wasn't doing all the schoolwork I was supposed to be doing, I was reading, and I was a voracious reader, and I consumed so many books on history. A little bit of sports history, which I love, a lot of American history, especially Native American history, which fascinated me. So I got all this history, and later on, I found myself as a professor who taught the history of philosophy in the world, like the ancient Greeks, but mostly I taught the history of world religions at Glassboro State College, now known as Rowan University. And I loved that, and I did it for quite a few years. And you can't teach about world history or world religions without teaching world history too. They go hand in hand. So here is one key undeniable truth that I learned by studying history. You cannot possibly have a country and maintain it and grow it without the service and sacrifice of members of the military, the armed forces, men and women. Starting back in our own history with the Revolutionary War, there's no way we could have had a country without the sacrifice and service. No way we could have prevailed against Great Britain. It's still a jaw-dropping miracle that we did and become independent without lots of sacrifice and service. And then just a few decades later, we had to do it again in a slightly different way in the War of 1812. There was no way we could prevail again against the British that had more naval battles in our country on the Great Lakes and New Orleans and the Chesapeake Bay and even around the Marsh River. So this was an important thing that developed in 1812. Then, and it took about 3 years, that war. It's not one that stands out in history so much, and I'm not sure exactly why. But then, in the 1860s, we had a horrendous civil war where somewhere between 650 and 850,000 people died. And it was devastating. But without the service and sacrifice of so many people, we would not have a United States of America. And that lasted about 4 years, and it was just terrible. Some families fighting other members of their family. And all those leading generals for both sides, the Confederate and the Union, they had gone, most of them had gone to school together at West Point. They were friends. They knew each other very well. And yet they fought against each other. And it was a terrible terrible ordeal in every way you can imagine. But the Union prevailed and preserved the United States of America. Fast forward to World War I. When World War I broke out, we weren't a significant world power. And this is just a little over 100 years ago. In fact, we were ranked very, very low. To give you some perspective, France had an army of 8 million. Germany had an army of 11 million in World War I. Russia had an army of 12 million. I forget what Great Britain's was, but it was in the millions. You know what we had? 127,000. That's it. And we wanted to stay out of it. We wanted to stay isolated because it was in our DNA that all these European wars had been going on for centuries. But ultimately, we couldn't stay out of it. And through the heroic efforts of volunteers, about 40%, and about 60% a draft, we built an army very quickly of 5 million and entered the war and turned the tide in favor of the Allies. Fast forward to World War II, and this might shock you, that our military at the outbreak of World War II was ranked 17th in the world, behind countries even like Romania. We had less of a military. Again, a lot of those European powers had armies in the millions. We had 189,000. We quickly ramped up, same way, volunteers and a draft, and built an army of 8 million. And we came out of World War II having been the primary reason, along with our allies that won that war. And we became the number one military power in the world. And we have been ever since. It's a source of joy and sadness, pride and disappointment together, that we spend, besides the dedication and those two important words in every war, service and sacrifice. Besides those things, we had to recognize that it was our position in the world. We now spend 10 times all the next 10 countries combined on weapons and military as they do. And it keeps us number one in the world. In fact, there's no other country that is even close. We spend more than China, Russia, France, Germany, England, on and on. 10, the next 10 biggest militaries in the world. We spend more than 10 combined. So that's what helps to keep us free and keep us number one in the world. And it's sad that it has to be, but it's something to be thankful for that we keep that position. And since the World War II, we've had the Korean War, we've had the Vietnam War, we've had the Gulf Wars, and all in all, I don't know the exact number. I think somewhere in the vicinity of 2 million Americans have died in the service of their country, out of about 20 million that have served the military, men and women. And Sunday, we were blessed by having 3 great examples in a message given by Roy Oliver of women, Julia Childs, Clara Barton, and Molly Pitcher, that really, women that played key roles in different wars. Was fascinating. And you can find that on YouTube. So let me get back to here what I'm talking about. If you ever need a pick-me-up, if you're having a down day or a down week, I'm going to recommend something that's a surefire source of inspiration and a real pick-me-up for you. Read the histories. Go online and read the histories of people who have received in our country the highest award the country gives, the Medal of Honor. Out of those 20 million people served, only 3,500 have been given since it started during the Civil War. That's a really small percentage, 3,500. If you look at some of the facts about those 3,500, you see another layer of amazement and wonder. And that is almost 25% of them, of the 3,500, were immigrants from a wide range of countries, mostly European countries, but all over the place. And then if you take the children of immigrants and the grandchildren of immigrants, you get up over 50% of the Medal of Honor, the 3,500 Medal of Honor recipients that are directly tied to immigrants or recent immigrants, or children or grandchildren. That's really an incredible fact. So here's another incredible fact. Of the 3,500, more than 750 of those recipients were not even citizens of our country. You don't have to be a citizen to serve in our military. In fact, even today, I think something close to 5% of our military is made up of non-citizens, hoping most of them, I would imagine, to become citizens. And they're serving a country they love before they're even technically a part of it. So that's an amazing fact, too. Well, only 19 of those have been awarded the medal twice. 5 of them are born in Ireland. And Ireland seems to be overrepresented in the total number of people in our country that have been recipients of the Medal of Honor. I'm going to give you 2 quick stories. But there's endless stories of inspiration to be found in the heroics of what these people did for their country, for our country. And it's directly tied to why we have all the blessings, all the freedoms we have, and all the blessings in our country are tied to the service and sacrifice of people. And, from the Revolutionary War onward, people recognized God's providence in bringing that about against all odds. So the first story is about a man, his name was Captain Joseph Rochefort. In 1929, he was in the Navy. In 1929, he was sent to Japan along with a few others to learn the Japanese language inside and out. And it turned out to be a very good thing that they did. He was stationed in Hawaii, and after Pearl Harbor, he got assigned to intelligence, listening on the radio for Japanese communication, trying to break their code. And as the war ramped up after Pearl Harbor, there was a key battle that turned the tide in the war. And he thought he had uncovered it. Just one guy, Captain Joseph Roquefort. And he told his superior officers he thought the Japanese total force of Navy and airplanes were headed towards these small islands in the middle of the Pacific. I can't remember the names of the islands right offhand, but the battle that was to come was called the Battle of the Midway. And it turned the tide in our favor. It lasted for 4 or 5 days, one battle. And his superiors didn't believe him. So he came up with this really special way to prove his point. He sent out a message that the U.S. troops stationed there on these small islands were out of fresh water, and there's desalting, whatever you call it, seawater equipment had failed, and they were in trouble. So what they saw right after that, they saw the Japanese had gotten this message and started loading more fresh water on their ships and equipment to, make fresh water out of seawater when they got to. So it proved, yes, they were headed towards and planning to invade these small islands and have a leaping off point to then send planes and ships towards the mainland of the United States. And because of his heroics and his persistence and his intelligence, we won that battle, and it was a big deal. But it took him a long time. In fact, he died before he was ever a recipient, as many are, to be awarded the Medal of Honor. And maybe 20, 25 years after he died, his family was represented when he was awarded the highest honor of all, the Medal of Honor. Second story is from a boy. His name was Tibor Rubin. When he was 13 years old in Hungary, the Nazis had invaded and sent him and his entire family, his siblings, his parents, his grandparents, aunts and uncles, 15 of them, to a concentration camp. He was there for about a year until the end of the war. He survived it as a 14-year-old boy. He was the only one of his family that survived it. He desperately wanted to get to the United States of America that had liberated him from this concentration camp and saved his life. And he eventually made it to the United States of America. And he wanted to join the military. The World War II was done, but we had another war coming up just a few years later, the Korean War. And first time he failed the language exam. He couldn't pass that, but he persisted. He became an incredible hero in the Korean War and was awarded this, but not right away. 2 of his superior officers filled out the paperwork, but his paperwork was lost. So something like, 30, 40 years or more went by. Not long before his own death, maybe when he was 70 or 80 years old, people persisted to get, I think it was Ronald Reagan gave him Ronald Reagan gave the family of Joseph Roquefort. I forget who awarded the Medal of Honor, which president, for this Tibor Rubin. But that is one of the things. It all comes down to It all comes down. George Bush, that's who awarded him his George W. Bush. And it all comes down to service and sacrifice. And this is something I love about my country, our country, that we are always looking back to try to correct a mistake, to right a wrong, to make things the way they should have been. And we never give up on that. I don't think there's a year gone by that we don't go back and recognize someone for whatever reason. Sometimes it's racism, sometimes it's religious reasons, sometimes it's lost paperwork or just something got lost. But our country never stops looking back to honor those that should have been honored in the first place. Here's the strange thing. The same two things, service and sacrifice, that make it possible to have a country, they are the same two things, service and sacrifice, that make it possible to have a church, to maintain a church, to preserve a church, to grow a church. It needs the same exact qualities. Service and sacrifice. Well, let's get to this text in just these few minutes and close with these thoughts. The passage, did I read it at the beginning? I don't think I did. Let me read it right now. Matthew chapter 20. Start verse 20 through 28. The mother of the sons of Zebedee came to him with her sons, bowing down and making a request of him. And he said to her, "What do you wish?" She said to him, "Command that in your kingdom these two sons of mine may sit, one on your right and one on your left." But Jesus answered and said, "You do not know what you are asking for. Are you able to drink the cup that I am about to drink?" They said to him, "We are able." He said to them, "My cup you shall drink. But to sit on my right and on my left, this is not mine to give, but it is for those for whom it has been prepared by my Father." And hearing this, the 10 became indignant at the two brothers. But Jesus called them to himself and said, "You know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their great men exercise authority over them. It is not so among you, but whoever wishes to become great among you shall be your servant, and whoever wishes to be the first among you shall be your slave. Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life a ransom for many." May the Lord add a blessing to the reading of his holy word. Now, this started out with the mother of Jesus bringing James and John and making that request. She wants honored places, seats of importance for her two sons, for them to be treated special. But Jesus knows where this is coming from. He doesn't even address the mother. He talks directly to James and John and says, "Are you able to drink the cup I'm going to drink from?" And of course they say yes. But Jesus knew where this kind of pathetic request originated. And here is what Jesus did. Stop and think for a moment how hurt he must have been and disappointed in his disciples. But he didn't yell at them. He didn't get angry. He didn't curse at them. It says he brought them to himself and he taught them and he instructed them. He straightened them out to how they should be thinking about these things. But it must have been a hurtful thing, because for 3 years they had seen him do signs and wonders and many miracles. They had seen him heal people, teach people, show love and compassion for people, extend forgiveness of sins to people. And yet, what were they thinking about? And this is not at the beginning of his 3-year ministry on earth. It was at the end. It was about a week before he was to be crucified. And this was what was on their minds. It's sad to see where they were at, but it's joyful to see where they arrived and became. Well, Jesus said, I came to serve, service and sacrifice. You know, there's a phrase we use in our communion service every month. And sometimes when you repeat the words that we get used to, we forget the weighty true meaning of them. And I'm going to point out these that we say every month. And so, in remembrance of these your mighty acts in Jesus Christ, we offer ourselves in praise and thanksgiving as a holy and living sacrifice. That's in union with what Christ did for us. And that is what we're called to be. Followers of Jesus who serve and sacrifice for him because he has done it for us. Amen. I look forward to seeing you all soon. Take care.